for another edition of the Agents of Fandom podcast. Little bit of a retro look to the show today as we're ready to talk some Echo and, of course, Loki episode 5. We don't have our main man, Adam, today. We want to give our prayers to Adam's pup Lacey, who had to go through some surgery today at the vet. So shout out to Adam. We're thinking about you. We're thinking about the pup. But we are joined today. My name is TJ Zwarich. Forgot to mention that. What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in. And we are joined by my former every week co-host and best buddy, Garrett Blaney. How you doing?
I'm doing good, dude. I'm excited to be back with you anytime I get to be back up with you. So linking up, chatting about some things, especially if it's a retro feel. Even though Adam, I miss you, buddy. I love you. Shout out Lacey. We're thinking about her, and we're gonna do this episode in her honor. So I'm excited.
And we have a very special guest today as well. His very first time on the podcast on your recommendation. I hear he's such a phenomenal guy. He pops into the chat and immediately I'm like, I love this dude. He's fantastic. From Discussing Film from Collider, Diego Peralta, how you doing?
I'm doing great. First time ever on a podcast, so these things are real. Thank you for having me. Let's have fun.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either. I'm just gonna let them think I know how to do this, and we'll proceed.
You could have fooled us, I promise you. But I'm so honored that it's ours.
Yeah, I'm happy too. Look at us. Who would have known? Not me.
Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? Not me.
So before we even dive into, which we got a lot of content to cover, episode 5 of Loki was wild. And then they dropped a new teaser trailer for Echo, TV mature rating, lots and lots of Kingpin in the trailer. It's crazy. Before we even get into that, though, Diego, give me a little bit of a background of yourself so our viewers can get to know you a little bit. Where did your Marvel fandom start? Why do you like this stuff? And then also give us a little background of what you do in the industry.
Oh, well, I became a journalist about a year ago. I was deeply online and I loved movies and I had the luck to monetize it for some reason. But I'm having a lot of fun. I've had such fun opportunities at the many outlets that have given me an opportunity, such as Collider, Discussing Film, Geeks of Color, and many others, Awards Radar. I love them all. And also, my Marvel fandom started a little bit late because I saw Avengers 1 when I was 12. I was going through the rough puberty patch of, this is for nerds. I don't need this because I'm cool and edgy. And then I grew up a little bit more and I was like, I'm obsessed with it. And I've thought about the MCU every day since. Like a toxic marriage, I guess.
You are welcome, because I got like a very small amount of age on Garrett, but like we went through the loving superheroes and it not being cool, so the people 8-10 years younger than us could have it be cool and grow up being a nerd and having it be cool. And then shout out to our people like MTF in chat and Carlos who did that so that it could be a little bit cooler for us as well. So it all comes around full circle. And Diego, we're happy to have you. Let's dive into it. Before we talk about Loki, I want to talk about this Echo trailer, because to me that was fantastic. Garrett, this was one of the first things that we've been talking about on the podcast a long time ago, was when it just kind of got announced. And I feel like that was one of the first things we were diving into as we were reviewing Hawkeye, and Maya Lopez was a character that showed up on that show. And we find out that there's going to be an Echo spinoff. Daredevil's going to be in it. We see a pinch of him in the trailer. But of course, Kingpin, Vincent D'Onofrio, is a main feature point throughout this trailer. It's going to be the very first Disney Plus Marvel project in general that's going to be TV mature, leading it right into a rated R. Deadpool's coming up soon. Garrett, what do you think of the trailer?
I was jazzed about the trailer. I had a great time watching it. I think there's some really exciting stuff. I'm very cautious, obviously, because now we know what kind of has been going on behind the scenes with Marvel TV and how the shaky process that it was run. So we know that it didn't affect all the projects. WandaVision was incredible. Loki was incredible. A lot of the stuff was really good until, maybe Secret Invasion. So I have hope that this is still going to follow along that trend of being, pretty high quality. Alakwa Cox looks fantastic. Vincent D'Onofrio looks fantastic. some really cool editing was in the trailer too. So I think there's a lot to be excited about, and I would like to focus. For me, I'm going to try to focus on that stuff rather than the possible, Marvel TV whatever. That's less important to me in this. So really really fun. I was obviously not expecting this to drop today, so it was a fun surprise when I saw the notification, and then I had to get back to work. So that's kind of all I've thought about it since, and I hope to watch it a couple more times tonight.
Shout out to MTF in chat. He says on the Twitch chat, shout out to everyone who's joining us live on Twitch, and make sure you're subscribed to the Agents of Fandom wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching us on YouTube after the fact, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and subscribe. But MTF makes a great point because he says, I think the binge drop is going to help with that show a lot. I'm honestly of the mind that while I like the week-to-week model better than the binge model, I'm of the mind that most of these Marvel shows would have been better received in general if they would have been dropped as the binge model, because as we learn with all this writer strike stuff, as that comes to fruition, now they're totally remaking Daredevil with a proper showrunner and proper writers leading the helm. To me, that was kind of like a flaw of all of them, and I'll touch on that more when we get into the Loki episode. Don't worry, Layla, no spoilers yet. I see you in chat. We'll drop a spoiler warning before we get there. But one very small qualm I have from the episode kind of falls back to that of like, I need more if this is how you're going to show like my episode kind of thing. Like, I need 12 episodes. I don't just need 6. And so I think the binge model is going to bode very well for that. Diego, what did you think of the Echo trailer?
I thought Kevin Feige was grateful for it. I thought he saw the variety piece that dropped this week and he was like, what do we got? Throw them anything. And the Echo trailer was conveniently right at the door. I loved it. I think it has a very good tone. I think it's reminiscing of the Netflix shows, and also it's doing its own thing. Um, I think it's what the MCU needed in terms of television, go a little bit mature, go a little bit serious, and stray away from the world building a little bit. So I thought it was very cool. I know most people didn't think much of the series when it was announced, or when it began filming, or when it entered post production. People didn't think much of it. But I think this trailer is going to change a lot of minds, and that's important. And I also think it's kind of impressive how it's going to drop around the 3rd anniversary of WandaVision. Like, time is flying when it comes to Marvel television. So this change was needed, and hopefully it leads to, a better future, because after what's been happening this year, they certainly needed a win.
And one thing I think it's particularly going to do, like you mentioned, that tone, I think it's really going to bring a lot of people from the Marvel television era who haven't liked what they're doing on Disney Plus right back into the helm. So it might actually bring in a lot of different viewers than they kind of otherwise might have gotten with that, because obviously, one, with Vincent D'Onofrio being so prevalent and being that same Kingpin from the Netflix Marvel TV shows in this trailer, we get the quick touch of Daredevil in the trailer. And we're not going to dive into he's in a red suit again, what does this mean, how did he get his red suit. We're not going to dive into the frame by frame specifics. We still got a lot of Loki to talk about, but I think that tone that you both mentioned is going to bring a lot of viewers in. Like, this one's not just dropping on Disney Plus, it's dropping on Hulu as well at the same time. I think this is going to bring a lot of new people. I watched this trailer with my partner Ava, and she immediately says, like, I have shivers. This indigenous representation, it looks so incredible. And it was cool. Like, the Daredevil and Kingpin and Maya Cox, like, Maya Lopez by Alaco Cox. All of that stuff was great, but like then the external stuff that we haven't really seen before, like we knew there was going to be Daredevil, we knew there was going to be Kingpin, but this deep dive into the culture as well and all the different like aspects we just briefly saw in the trailer, it looked so cool. And I'm very excited for this show to drop, and really just excited in general for the foray into TV mature R-rated content that they're doing in the MCU here, with starting with Echo, next to Deadpool, maybe Daredevil after that, we still don't know. And then who knows after that with things like Blade, more Moon Knight, etc., etc., etc. Spoiler warning for Loki, episode 5, the penultimate episode, only one left. We're diving into spoiler content now.
TJ,
Um,
hold on. One last thing about Echo is that I think it was really fun to remember that this is the same universe where Iron Man sings Christmas songs. It's the same place where Kingpin's like beating a guy to a pulp, and then in the same city you have I don't know, you have Tom Holland going like, "Oh, my homework."
Yeah,
exactly.
that's what's to love, the interconnectedness of it, and something so crazy could be happening in one part of the city, and something so different could be happening in the other, and that's why we love the MCU, right?
And the
Absolutely.
MCU does explain that a little bit better than, say, shout out to, like, I'm not besmirching, because the Spider-Man 2 game for PS5 is absolutely incredible. You can find out our full review of the game on the Agents of Fandom podcast feed, where Adam, Damon, Ryan, and myself did a full 2-hour review, and that was one of the things we touched on, was like, there are like 6 venom nests and symbiotes pyramids pouring out of the ground, all within 2 blocks of Avengers Tower. Tony, you could just do a sonic cannon and blow that all to shit immediately if you just helped out a little bit. Where are you guys? But I feel like they,
He wasn't on shift. He wasn't on shift.
yeah, exactly. They explain that a little bit better in the MCU as to maybe why certain people aren't coming in at various times, and that was actually one of the things that the writers. I believe I can't remember if it was a writer, a director, but there was a bunch of Echo footage or not footage, but quotes and stuff that got thrown out there today. And one of them was that, like, this is not a multiversal story. This is not a universal story. This is not a planetary story. It's about a family. That's what this is about. It's about a family. And so I think a lot of people are going to be very excited to get that grounded content. And another, before we even push into Loki again, I wanted to mention another theory that our own Damon had, and that's that potentially, like, they brought up another thing in those quotes that was brought up, was that Maya Lopez's powers, Echo's powers, are not going to mimic those from her comic counterpart. It's not going to be the same as Taskmaster, where it's just like, I see what you can do. Great, now I can do it too. Maybe a bit of that mixed in, but there's going to be other things mixed in. She has some Phoenix Force powers in the comics, and I don't know if they're going to do that. But Damon had an interesting idea that maybe they will be converting her into a bit of a new Iron Fist, and that'll be something that her powers get brought into. So stay tuned to the Agents Fandom TikTok and YouTube and Instagram pages as well, because that theory is going to be going up there shortly. But let's dive into some Loki, because episode 5 was wild. Spoiler warning once again. Spoiler warning once again.
Yeah. Loki goes bald at the end. Loki goes bald officially.
Yes, and he there's an interesting stuff. A lot of old man father potential tie-ins there too. I feel like a lot of people were. We'll dive into this more, but a lot of people were saying, Sylvie and Loki, it's so weird. They're the same person. We want Loki and Mobius. There was, I feel like, a bit of interesting aspects of that potential relationship that got revealed in this episode as well. But Garrett, we haven't gotten a chance to dive in and break down every episode together. So before even episode 5, what have been your thoughts on the series so far?
I've really enjoyed it so far, to be honest with you. I've just kind of taken it for what it is. I've enjoyed the writing, the directing, the acting, the story. I'm pretty locked in, and this one only sealed that more. I can't wait to see what the finale provides. I could watch probably 30 more episodes of this show if they were available. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
I'm with you. I found this series absolutely incredible so far. I feel most people seem to be genuinely incredibly high on this episode. For me personally, I think I might actually be lower on it than most. I still loved it. It just didn't have the same, like, oh my god, that was incredible feel to me, as I've seen a lot of other people on social media for kind of one very specific reason, and it's more of a me problem than anything else. But Diego, what have you thought of the series as a whole so far, and then what do you think of episode 5?
I've been enjoying it. Sadly, I don't think it reaches the heights the first season did. I think the first season had great character moments and it had a little bit of better writing and direction. But having said that, the second season has been way better than I expected and it has surprised me a lot. And I think that what they're doing is what they should have done from the beginning, which in my opinion is the multiverse is important because there are people Loki cares about. And that's a trope that's easy to get lost into with multiversal stories because you get caught up in the cameos and the variants and the things that go differently. But you have to remember that these stories are important because of the main characters and what they care about. And regarding last night's episode, I lost sleep to get through it. I watched it pretty late because of Spider-Man 2, which you mentioned earlier, and I really liked it. I think this second season is brave. It's taking a lot of bold choices, and I can't wait to see where they're going with next week's finale.
I couldn't agree more, and chat's going off about this right now as well, about just how well written that episode was. And I feel this episode gave us a lot of those character moments that you talked about from season one. I felt a lot of those in this episode that we didn't necessarily haven't gotten as many of throughout the series, specifically with Loki and how his revelations of those around him and how he's grown from the Avengers and Loki and the first Thor movie when we first see him and he's saying, "You crave subjugation. You were meant to be ruled." He's telling all the people of Earth, and now he's doing every single thing he can to try and give people a choice, to try and allow people to choose. And it's really cool to see kind of how he has grown throughout, and I felt we got a lot of those moments in this. The only real qualm that I had, and again, this is a me problem, was that I'm excited for the finale, and I kind of feel like that we're just now going into the finale, picking back up where we were almost at the end of episode 4, where it's like I want, when there's only 6 episodes, I always crave more overall plot pushing, and well, they absolutely did that based on what happened to Loki over the course of this episode. Returning to a spot we already were. I don't know, it just irks me weird. But again, that's a me problem more than anything else. And Diego, what you mentioned, how Loki's relationships with these people on different timelines, how we got to feel it this episode. I think this episode did that better than any multiversal thing we've seen in the MCU so far, of making us care about the other timelines, making us care about the characters on the other timelines.
Yeah, I could watch Loki and Sylvie talk in that bar for 50 minutes. I don't care.
Exactly, yeah. Honestly.
And I don't think there's really, like, I guess the only other example I can think of like some timeline where I would be like, or some universe, I guess, where I would be bummed is like, because I've seen because I've seen Wanda's kids in Multiverse of Madness. Like, I guess I know that Wanda, but other than that, that's such a small, like, nugget of an example that I can provide that, like, this is so satisfying because you're like, yes, finally I have something to care about that isn't this sacred timeline that keeps getting drilled into my head, and the temporal loom and the throughput multa waters and the blah blah blah. I have something substantial to care about, and that's like these individual characters in these timelines. So that's a really great point.
On that note, I'm going to skip ahead in the rundown a little bit, and we'll go back to the beginning of the episode after, since we're just talking about this anyways. But that conversation between Loki and Sylvie, it did 2 really important things. One, like we just talked about, it made us care about these characters. But 2, it really just showed vulnerability and openness from Loki of just getting to the root of why am I doing this? What is the point? And it's because I need my friends. If I don't have my friends, what am I? Like, I don't have anywhere to go. I don't have anywhere
really
to
relatable.
It is.
He can really start a podcast.
Exactly. Start up a podcast and hop on with his friends, talk about all of his mischief times throughout the MCU.
That podcast will be lit.
That podcast will be lit. Have it just specifically be these things of season 1, it turns out Loki is DB Cooper. Season 2, it turns out, shout out to our friend Britt, because she was dropping this theory in chat basically every episode, and she nailed it, that Casey would be one of the escapees of Alcatraz, and that would be sort of this season's DB Cooper.
How do you even come up with that if you're not in a Marvel meeting room? Where do you start?
Incredible, like truly incredible. So shout out to Britt for pulling that theory. Absolutely nailed that one. But I thought it was so interesting the way Loki talked with Sylvie, because not only was it relatable to real life, it made sense to his character. He just wants to be loved since he's felt this whole time of his life where he was kind of the other. And he's finally felt accepted by friends. He has a purpose. He has his own glorious purpose. But I also felt a tinge of like meta in that conversation of just looking at the MCU as a whole, of sort of a lot of people being afraid to move on, of like, Tony got his story. Steve Rogers got his story. They're where they need to be now. Embrace the new. Go write your own story. Embrace the new. That I got a hint of meta in that conversation, as well as the multiverse is in shambles and we see a totally new chapter of the MCU, and maybe it's not the Avengers, maybe it's going to be the X-Men, maybe it's going to be the Fantastic Four, etc. And so I thought that was interesting, the way that they kind of weave that in as well. But bringing this back to the start of the episode, everyone gets shot to their various timeline. We see Casey and Alcatraz. Mobius got his jet ski moment, finally!
Show's over. We can all leave. Mobius
exactly. Got everything we needed. Mobius has got the jet ski. And that Mobius on the jet ski, Garrett, I want to throw it to you for your thoughts on this, because that, to me, really hammered home. I'm getting your thoughts on something that's not even on the rundown, but that to me really hammered home, like, Sylvie's conversation of, like, they're where they're supposed to be now. Yeah, Loki was convincing her, like, he loved the TVA. He would want the choice to go back. But even throughout all that, he yearned for jet skis, and he seemed truly happy.
I mean, my favorite line from the show, or from the episode, is when Loki says, you know, we got to get back to the TVA or whatever, and he's like, no, you mean ATV, and I got a couple of them in the back. Like, that guy is enthused. And it's funny too, because if a random stranger showed up at my house after I got home from my job, which was selling stuff at a dealership, and they were like, hey, I want to still know about this stuff. Like, I wouldn't take them into my garage and be like, come and check out this bad boy. That shows, you know, his level of commitment to that. So I see where you're coming from. But to me, I understood both sides. I don't know. It wasn't very black and white to me. And I understood the need to, you know, maybe save all the timelines. But it's interesting.
And of course, as Sylvie gets the full understanding of why these timelines need to be saved, because of the spaghettification of the TVA and all of the timelines in general. I saw a lot of people on socials kind of comparing this to, like, that felt like Infinity War, and they obviously had the same dusty kind of examples. It would make sense that multiversal time unraveling would have similar aesthetic to Infinity Stones doing it.
But with pasta.
With pasta, exactly. Diego, how did you feel the stakes in this episode? Because, like, we really got that Infinity War-esque, well, shit's disappearing now.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. It makes Kang and whatever's coming next a bigger threat. And I also feel like it summarizes what the Loki show has always been. It's a guy who wants to redeem himself way in over his head. Like, listen, let's be realistic. Loki's not going to stop this. There's no way Loki and the TVA gang are going to save the day, get rid of Kang, or Kangs, plural. So, but that's what makes us watch it. It's like, I know they're toast, but I still want to see them win. So, it was very lovely because Tom Hiddleston is so good at conveying that sense of impending doom on his face. You believe that Tom Hiddleston's gonna die in this whenever he's worried. So I really liked it. I think it raises the stakes, and I can't wait for next week, because how do you even get away from that? No matter how many templates you had, eventually you're gonna run out of timelines, right?
You would think. And so I have a very interesting theory. And I'm saving it for last. People, I'm saving it for the very end. Damon already whipped this one out on the TikTok and YouTube and Reels as well. So some people have gotten a taste, but I want to save it for the very end. Because I do think it brings a potential interesting change to what we could be seeing from Loki in the future, and maybe have him end up, quote unquote, winning this whole battle with time. But as we see everybody get shot back to the same time, to their own timelines, my understanding was Loki did not he stayed in the TVA. He was still there because he does not have a timeline to get shot back to. He is like Captain America, a man out of time. He was that's why he was taken down by the TVA in the very first place, is he wasn't supposed to exist in that timeline.
But his timeline was pruned, right?
And
On the
then
premiere. Yeah.
yeah, and his timeline was pruned. So like on that thought process, like my thought was he just goes back there. I don't understand the Sylvie of it all, if I'm being honest. Usually I can kind of connect things in my head of, okay, so she just also stayed in the TVA, but then took her tempad and left to the McDonald's. What, like, Garrett, what do you think happened there?
Well, she has He Who Remains tempad, so that was just like that was like the timeline that she had chosen previously. So she just went back to that one. That's how I took it. Like she had,
Like kind of like a right before the explosion type of thing.
yeah, she got reset to that one, the last timeline that she was in before.
Oh, like the last log on her Uber. Just like, oh yeah,
Yeah,
that was the last
like yeah,
destination you went to.
or like
Yeah.
when your browser shits out on you and you have a bunch of tabs open and then you try to open it again and it's like, oh, you want us to take you to the last spot you were? Yeah,
Sure.
please, that'd be really nice.
Absolutely
I
like
think-
that. Yeah. And then it's a McDonald's in the 80s. Yeah.
You're right, and there's exactly my dream spot. The McDonald's in the 80s.
That's where
Yeah,
I
exactly.
live.
And see, like that all checks out. I get that she still has He Who Remains tempad. The odd part to me was just like her being like, yeah, I know, I remember all of that. I was there, and so I guess my inference from that is just that like her and Loki both got reset to the TVA. She saw him passed out and was like, ah, shit. I guess I'm gonna go back to my timeline now, and that was like, that's how it went. Like,
No, I don't think she went back to the TVA. I think she just went back to her timeline, but she remembers like the explosion. Whereas the other people didn't remember the TVA or the explosion at all. So she just like, yeah, I remember that the explosion happened, so you don't need to like re-explain who you are to me, because he
Yeah.
had just been doing that to everyone. That's how I took it.
bringing it back to
Absolutely.
Mobius. Yeah, sorry, you go.
Oh yeah, sorry. No, I was gonna ask like something a little bit to the side. I think it would be something very cool about seeing how you guys understand Sylvie. How long do you think she was preparing to fight the TVA? Because it's never explicitly shown. She can spend a lot of time in very many places. So do you think in season one she was chasing the TVA for 30 years, 300, thousands of years? What's your take on that, real quick, before we move on?
I mean, she was probably like, we'll say 8 to 12 in the like flashback where she gets captured.
I'm
Yeah, if you don't have a
thinking that, and
calendar or any metric to.
Oof.
and the
That's
calendar is totally different every place you go, and you're not just even going on Earth. You're doing your Asgard, your other planets all over the galaxy. So who does really know? That would be pretty crazy. But I
Who
want to bring it
wouldn't-
back to,
Yeah, who wouldn't find a McDonald's for shelter in that
Yeah.
case?
yeah, you just gotta
Exactly.
chill and get a burger. Like at the end of the day, sometimes you just need like some fries, and you just gotta sigh and think things through.
Yeah, after centuries. Oh man.
That was really like I felt that, TJ. Like you've definitely done that a couple of times before. It's
Yeah,
like in a
that was
McDonald's,
a
just
very
like
personal reference.
So, to be honest with you, not that often, that exact moment, not that often in a McDonald's, but with McDonald's in my own home, yeah, 100%. Of just like, I did it.
honestly, I think I've done that with McDonald's in your home.
Yeah, exactly.
You hold it in. You hold it in all the way to get to your house, and you're like, whoosh.
No, it was day old cold McDonald's, but it was needed. It was
Sound
needed.
bad.
Took some. I had at the like midnight lunch at my wedding. I had or whatever it's called. We ordered McDonald's, and that just brought. That's exactly it. Bringing it home at the end of a long wedding day and just being like, oh, we did it.
I'm pretty sure it was my breakfast the next morning, if I'm going to be honest with you. But regardless, it was like we did it. He did it, but I was here for it.
Exactly. So
Let's go back to the TVA before
You're
we're
right.
going
Mobius.
down a McDonald's
Mobius.
rabbit hole.
yes, exactly. I want to talk
a
about.
branch.
I feel exactly
My
a
own
McDonald's
timeline.
branch timeline. I want to talk about one portion of the Mobius story that I forgot when he was on Earth, and he's inviting him into that garage, as Garrett said. I thought it was hilarious that Mobius is his two kids are Loki and Thor. He's got one little kid who is causing chaos. Chaos. Where'd you get that? Oh, I stole it. I'm gonna set stuff on fire. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. He runs away. And then what is the dad? What is Mobius, aka if Odin was a good father? What does he do? He says, Thor, older brother, please go get your younger brother. Make sure he doesn't do anything stupid. And to hammer home that comparison, what do we know about Thor from Ragnarok? He loves
He
snakes.
likes snakes. Yeah.
He loves snakes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Mobius says, I'll get you this puppy to his older son. And he says, well, what about Snake? Because he loves snakes as well. And I thought that was just kind of an incredible little parallel. And they utilized the same parallels not only on Mobius, but on OB as well. Because OB, Ke Kwan continues to absolutely crush it in this role. What if, in another timeline, you and I just wrote stories and got our PhD and taught molecular physics together? Anything in a multiverse, put this guy in it because he's perfect. His little workshop looks exactly the same as it does in TVA. Like it's the same location, and he is also a writer who just wants to get everybody to read his damn book, just like he is in the TVA. Hey, it's in the guidebook. Did you read the guidebook? It's in the guidebook. Did you read the guidebook? And exactly the same in real life. He's got his PhD. He's a scientist, but also he just wants people to read his damn book. Garrett, what did you think about those parallels? And how have you enjoyed OB as a character in this series?
I mean, he's easily the the highlight of the season. You know, it feels like the part was written for Ki Kwan, and the scene in the books in the bookshop in the episode where he's
So sad.
trying to buy the book. He's like, no, I'll just give you cash for it. It's all good. I was having to watch the next couple scenes with windshield wipers. But
him
no.
dropping the books wasn't called for.
No, my God, I know that. When I saw that, I was, oh my gosh, we're just piling it on this man who's just the most adorable creature in all of the multiverses combined.
And then on top of that, you get the moment of like, oh, you did that quick. I mean, I wouldn't say 18, 19 months is quick. I lost my job. My wife left me.
But anyways, like, what else do we need? Happy to help. Like, just a gem, just an absolute gem. Yeah, I feel about OB how I feel about dogs. We just simply don't deserve them. We don't deserve him, and that's gonna make it all the more hurtful if he ends up being distrustful in the finale for any sort of reason. Like I've seen theorized, that's gonna hurt. Because he's just my favorite.
If there is some type of connection to himself and Victor, whether it be Victor Timely or another Kang, then they're plotting something that would be disappointing. But I honestly don't think this is gonna, and we'll touch on this after, but I really believe that this finale is not even going to be all that Kang focused. I think it's going to be very Loki focused, and I don't necessarily know how yet, but I think it's going to revolve a lot more around Loki than the first season finale did, when it was really all He Who Remains and Sylvie, and Loki just basically being the audience of like, what is going on? Let's take a second. Let's think about this. Let's talk about it. I think he's going to be much more a man of action in this finale than he was in past seasons, but in the past season. But we'll dive into that. And one of the reasons I think it is OB. He's given that science fiction pitch. You know, it's like science is it's the how, or I don't even remember what it was. It's the what and it's the when. Fiction, it's the why. And they really tried to hammer home that time slipping of why is he going to the different timelines of his friends. It's because subconsciously he cares about those friends. He senses their aura, and that's why he's getting pulled there. And eventually he kind of learns to tap into that. And my theory as to where Loki is going to be a major player, not just in the season finale, but going forward in the MCU, and maybe being one of the most integral portions of Secret Wars and the whole next phase of the MCU, is with Loki learning how, at the end of this episode, to pull himself, like Obi mentions, not just through time, but through space, He's traveling through universes, he's timelines. It's not just like he's going from here to back here. He's not just going from A to B and further back in one linear place. He's going to totally different aspects, places in space. I think that Loki is going to be the Beyonder. Now, in the first Secret Wars series, comic book renditions, and it's mostly agreed upon that when they do Secret Wars, it's not going to be one for one of the first one. It'll probably be closer to the second one. But in the first one, the Beyonder, and Damon explains this wonderfully in his video on the Agents of Fandom TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter pages, so make sure you check those out. The Beyonder essentially collects the heroes and the villains, and he takes them to Battle World for a fight to save the universe. And I think Loki is going to be the one, now that he potentially has some mastery over time and space here, who is going to try and save the multiverse and be the Beyonder. And if the multiverse is dying, he's going to be the one to bring these groups of people together to try and save it in similar ways that we've seen. Like, they'll pull some aspects of Doctor Doom, some aspects of Doctor Strange, some aspects of the Beyonder, and they'll do their own thing in the MCU. And they've theorized this on the Listen 3000 podcast, as well as some other places I've seen it, that Loki will be the new He Who Remains. And I think it'll be similar to like a He Who Remains' vein, but I don't think it'll be in the way Kang was. I think he's going to be the new Beyonder, where his role is to not maintain a timeline, but to help maintain the multiverse. And I think we're eventually going to get the Thor Loki reunion in Secret Wars, but I think he's going to end up having a massive, massive role. And that's also potentially a way that if, as the cases keep going crazy and new details emerge in the Jonathan Majors trials that don't necessarily look so good for him, if they do have to pivot away from him, then they could kind of make it into a situation where, yeah, maybe they pull in some Doom, but maybe the villain is the dying multiverse. Maybe the villain of the overarching series is incursions and the multiverse exploding in itself. And Loki could have to be someone who makes some hard decisions that sometimes look a little bit villainous in sake of the multiverse. Could go be at odds with some of our heroes, but also be on the sides of some of the heroes to make it work. And like MTF says it in chat right now, I think Loki's role in the aftermath of Secret Wars will be what Reed Richards' was after Secret Wars 2015. I honestly think they're going to pull a little bit of the Reed Richards, the little bit of Doctor Doom's role, a little bit of Doctor Strange's role in all of the Secret Wars, and kind of turn him into the MCU's Beyonder based on what we have seen from those powers. Garrett, I want to throw it to you. Episode 5 essentially just brings us back to where we were at the end of Episode 4, pre-explosion, now that Loki has the ability to time slip in control, go back to where he chooses, for now. Not mastery yet, he figured it out once. What do you think is coming for us in Episode 6?
That is an incredibly good question. Well, I assume we fix the temporal loom at some point, and then we get a bunch of branched timelines or different dimensions, which is going to be all good and fine for a while until it starts causing some incursions in other projects down the line. But aside from that, I haven't really placed too much thought into it.
Diego, do you think we're going to get a lot of Kang? Is it going to be chaos? Is it going to be happy, positive ending? Or are we going to feel this same Infinity War-like vibe of like, what the fuck?
Oh, I think it's definitely gonna be an Infinity War or a Loki season 1. I feel like he's going to go through hell to fix the TVA, and when he finally does, people are gonna be like, "Oh, dude, you're too late. The Kangs are here. We're done." And that's where it's gonna lead into the next Avengers or whatever. But going back real quick to what you just said, I feel like Loki with time slipping is me with podcasts, like not mastery. He figured it out once. So yeah, just thought about it real quick when you said that. But going
Mastered,
back to
mastered his
yeah,
first time. I think you're a little bit better than Loki. I'll go out and say that on the record.
thank you. But going back to the finale, I think that it's definitely going to focus on Loki himself and what he's feeling. Like I feel this season cares way less about Kang and the Avengers than the first season did. I think the first season was to set up the multiverse saga because it wasn't even a thing when that episode aired. Now we know what some of the game plan is. So I think it's gonna take some time to solve the conflict Loki has right now, which is saving the TVA, figuring out what's going on with himself and the people around him, and then probably just tease a little bit of his role in the upcoming multiversal war.
I think it's going to come down to very Loki focused, and we see his early time in Thor and the Avengers, where he wants nothing more than to rule, than to be king, than to be in charge over people, because he feels he deserves it, and it is his right. It
And
is
because
his
of daddy
birthright.
issues,
And because of daddy issues, exactly. And now that he has worked through his trauma, and he says at the end of this episode, it's not the why, it's not the when, it's the who. It has to be me. I am the only one who can do this. I think that will lead to, whether it's Loki as He Who Remains, the Beyond, or whatever, just Loki. I think his glorious purpose going forward is going to be the savior of the multiverse, and he may even act on a broader scale of things outside of just in the movies. I think he's going to act as the new Robert Downey Jr. of the MCU, as kind of like we had the authors of the Reign of Marvel Studios, Joanna Robinson, Dave Gonzalez, and Gavin Edwards on the show to talk about their new book. And we're actually going to have Dave Gonzalez, host of Trial by Content, on again to review the Marvels with us as well in a couple of weeks here.
and now you have me.
Exactly, and Diego as well. You were first on that list of that big graphic we just dropped on socials.
Let's roll.
And one of the things that that Joanna talked about in the book, and when we were chatting with her, was how Robert Downey Jr. was played a very central role, not just in the movies, but kind of like on the recruitment side of things, getting people into the MCU, being the face of the MCU. And now, while it makes sense on a popularity of character standpoint that it should be Spider-Man as the new face of the MCU, right? But there's the issues with Sony. There were plans for it to be Chadwick Boseman and Black Panther, but of course, due to his very sadly passing, that was no longer able to be the case. I could see it being Loki being the face of this phase, as he's burdened with glorious purpose. He is the only one who can save the multiverse. He is no longer our antagonist like he was in phase one. He's maybe will be slightly antagonistic, have to make some tough decisions, but he will be kind of the face of the multiverse saga going forward. And I think that would make sense too, considering Loki is probably the general public's favorite project of the multiverse saga. Now, you could say it's No Way Home, because No Way Home was a spectacle and it brought our three favorite Spider-Man together and it was wild. But first, in terms of multiversal storytelling, I think Loki is the one that people look far more fondly on. But we got an epic conclusion coming to this show. Episode 6, the final episode of Loki. Are going to be doing that one on a Tuesday as opposed to our typical Friday. It's not going to be next Friday because we're going to be very busy with Ms. Marvel and things like that. And so we're actually going to have it the following Tuesday with Paul from Heavy Spoilers himself. He's going to be joining us to break down Loki episode 6. So we'll be going in depth on the theories, Easter eggs, and all that. And then earlier in the week, we're going to have the Marvels primer with our own agent Aisha, followed by the Marvels review with Dave Gonzalez from The Ringer, host of Trial by Content, author of MCU, The Reign of Marvel Studios. And we also have so much great content coming on the site right now. And just in general, Invincible, Gen V, we're eating good right now. We're eating very good, especially towards the end of the week on Thursdays and Fridays. You can check out...
time to be a nerd.
Exactly. A very good time to be a nerd. And you can check out Adam's spoiler-free review, spoiler-filled review. Mine is the spoiler-free. Adam's spoiler-filled recap of... Yeah, I mean, I had your voice in my head saying it before you even said it. Spoiler-filled recap of Invincible Season 1. And so make sure you check that out as well. Follow the Agents of Fandom on socials. Hit the like button. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Before we get out of here, Diego, where can the people find you on socials? And do you personally have any pieces, content coming out that you'd love to plug?
Well, right now I do not. I have no idea what I'm going to be working on next week, which is a thrill. But Certainly, you have my Twitter, like connected to the Agents of Fandom posts around this podcast episode. You can find me there. I ramble a lot, I complain a little bit, and I just share my work over there. And also, you can find me on TikTok, which I will try to drop a link somewhere for you to find. And before wrapping up, I just want to say that this was a lovely time. This was a great first podcast episode. I've never thought about McDonald's so emotionally before. So thank you guys for that. Thank you for having me. And this was a ton of fun.
Welcome to my life. I only think of McDonald's emotionally. It is how it's my coping mechanism for all of my wounds. If you didn't tell us, you would have had no idea that it was your first podcast, Diego. You were absolutely incredible. We'll definitely have to make sure to have it happening again ASAP. Garrett, anything I missed? Do we got any upcoming content coming our way that through the editing tunnel, and anything else you got for the people before we get out of here?
Oh, I mean, nothing comes to mind. We're going to be reviewing the Marvels, obviously, so stay tuned for that. I believe Aisha is going to be covering that, so excited for that. And then we're cooking up a lot of new stuff for between now and the new year. So that's all. Just chuck that little tease out into the ether and leave it and not say anything else, and then follow it up with Diego. I
Oh,
I concur with TJ in that had you not told us, we would have never known it was your first podcast. And I we talked about this a little bit before we went on air, but I've been slacking with you for a couple months, and to finally put a face to the Slack channel DMs is just an absolute pleasure. So thank you for coming on. Thank you for giving your awesome insight. And TJ, thanks for allowing me to, muck it up with you again.
Of
you
course,
both are too
I.
kind. Thank you. Sorry.
No, you're good, my man. Diego, it was so nice to meet you. Garrett, it's always wonderful to chat with you, but especially about our favorite things with on the podcast that we created ourselves. Shout out to Ruben in the background doing amazing work as per usual, and we will see you next week. Our next episode will be the Marvels Primer, followed by the Marvels Review, followed by Loki Episode 6 review with Aisha, with Dave Gonzalez, with heavy spoilers. Lots of great stuff coming. Make sure you tune in. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. We will see you next week. Peace.
Peace.
See ya.